Hello, welcome to another video that I am trying to do because I am a screencasting noob. Anyway, today what we're going to be talking about is basic HTML building blocks. No pun intended. There are three that I typically use: block, inline block, and inline block. Inline block and inline. Oh, none is pretty obvious. Like you don't want to show stuff, so you display none. Anyway, the laundry list is long, and I honestly don't know what any of this Ruby stuff is. Tables avoid unless you're writing email, which we're not. And flex, I would encourage you to get familiar with. It's pretty cool. Again, we're not going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about these three things right here. Let's start with inline. Your standard inline elements are going to be span and hyperlinks. So href to awesomesite.com. This is an inline element, and anything that I put inside here is going to be inline as well. So we can look at the computed value, it's inline, and same thing goes for a link. They have some interesting default properties, but the thing that we're interested in is inline. So inline elements are typically text. You can do whatever you want with them, sorta. So let's go over some of those things that you can do. You can change color. You can change the background. That looks hideous. You can give it padding, which is really cool. You can give it a border radius and make it cool, look like a cool button. It's a cool button. Okay, but what you can't do is give it a margin bottom of 20. It's just not going to do that. And this is a really bad example because there's nothing underneath it, so you can't really see that the margin. But here, on the developer tools, you'll see that there's no orange box, but you can give it a margin left and right. So here's left, we put 10 pixels. Notice that the element just moved to the right a bit because now it has a margin left. And if we highlight, there's that orange box that I was talking to you about. So that's what you can do. Oh, you cannot give it a height because that'd be really weird. And you cannot give it a width. It will completely ignore that. It's just like, I don't really know what a width is. It's just going to be like, I am as wide as the text I am involved with. So if you want to be editing the width of an inline element, what you can do is you can kind of hack around it, and you can use padding. So you could do left and then give it 20 pixels. As long as you spell it correctly, like so. So you can give it 20 pixels, and then that's the way you can hack around the element and give it some width and blah, blah, blah. Highly not recommended. I would use inline block for this case, which is what I'm going to go after right now. Differences between inline block and an inline element is that inline block will respect some of the block properties like height and width. What's really cool about this is that it'll align itself with the text around it. So let's just kind of fill in the space here with more text, filling in the void. And if I click on this and I give it a height of 50 pixels, background red, and now you can kind of see that it's pushing the text below it a little further down because this is now a block inside of the sentence, which is really cool. Oh, so let's see. I'm not 100 in this. Like, I don't. So there it is. It also respects margin bottom, and I'm gonna assume if I add more text here that it will also background. Let's make it yellow. Yeah, it makes more sense. Height 50, margin top 50, 20. Oh, look at that. You can also give it a margin top and bottom. Let's say we wanted this to be in the middle. We can take our learnings and just say, hey, just make the padding where you want it to be, which is right about there, 27. Yeah, there you go. You can align this to the middle. I'm not 100% sure this is the best way. This feels kind of hacky to me. Inline blocks are typically going to be pictures. They're going to respect the same properties, I guess, or same descriptions as an inline. And what's inline block? And what's really weird is that Chrome DevTools right now is saying that this is an inline element. It's not. It's an inline block, and we just kind of proved that because I gave it a margin, and look what it did. It made some space. That's weird. Now we're going to be talking about display block. Divs are the most neutral elements that are blocks. If you look at the defaults, they're just a block, and that's all they are. So blocks are the building blocks, no pun intended, of HTML. One characteristic that you should always look out for is that blocks will, in fact, take 100% width of the parent element. So, for example, if I have a div here and I color it green, you'd expect like some green block going across the bottom of the paragraph. That is incorrect because the div doesn't have a height. It is non-existent. So that is another characteristic of a div. It doesn't have a specified height. You have to give it a height, or you have to put content in it. The height of the div is determined by the height of the content inside. So if we give it a bunch of text, it's going to be as tall as the text is. We can also specify the height, and it will ignore everything that is inside and just follow what I tell it to do, and that's really weird. You typically want to think about blocks as containers. So one thing that I do want to point out, and it's going to be my pro tip of the day. When you use a block, anything can go in it. Another block can go in it, another inline text, inline block, whatever. You can put anything inside of a block. It's cool. You cannot do the same thing for inline blocks and inline. So if I have a span here and I put a div here, let's just say I put this div here. I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure. Nope, it's saying, you know, you really shouldn't be putting this div inside of the span. It does kind of what I would expect it to do, but I have been told, and it's been my experience, to never do this type of thing. It results in very wonky behavior. Don't do this. This is bad. And the most common occurrence where I see this a lot is when you have a anchor tag. And again, we're going to go to awesomestsite.com. And then what we do is we put an image in there. And what's happening here is that we have an inline element wrapping an inline block element. So that's bad. So what we want to do is convert the inline to the anchor tag to either an inline block or a block element. Here's the MDM spec for HTML, inline versus block level elements, content model. Generally, inline elements may only contain data or other inline elements. Be careful, when you have a anchor tag surrounding a image, you always want to make sure that the anchor tag around the image is converted to an inline block or a block element. The spec expects you to follow those guidelines, but will quietly fail you if you don't. And you make your life hard and miserable and wonder why CSS is really difficult. And the reason being, I think it's definitely because there's no feedback loop. It doesn't tell you why you're wrong. It just tries to understand what you're doing and takes its best guess. And the problem is that every browser is going to guess a little differently than the other browser, and that's really hard to predict. That is it for today. Hopefully you learned something, and I will not see you because I'm not on the camera. Until next time, bye.